Remember the nurse that we talked about that basically, committed mass murder, was a serial killer? Let's put up the picture full mass. This nurse who murdered multiple patients is going to get life in prison, avoids lethal injection, even though she lethally injected many. Per the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Heather Pressdee, dubbed the killer nurse for her hand in the deaths of 17 nursing home patients at 5 facilities. Now remember, that number 17 may be more. Pleaded guilty on Thursday to 3 counts of first-degree murder and 19 counts of attempted murder. In return for her plea, the 41-year-old will avoid the possibility of death, okay? Will instead receive 3 consecutive life sentences plus hundreds more for the attempted murder charges. She'll never get out of prison. With millions watching and many people benefiting from this program called Indisputable, we just need 1% of the viewers to become a paid member so we can continue to bring this content to you. Now back to the show. So Pressdee wept as she addressed Judge Kubit before her sentencing, expressing remorse for her actions and acknowledging the impact on others' lives, including her parents. The judge described the sentence 3 consecutive life terms followed by hundreds more for years as reflective of the absolute depravity of her actions. That was the goal from the beginning. Her attorneys, James De Pasquale and Phil DeLucenti, said after the 7-hour proceeding, quote, "There was no doubt in our mind she was going to get the death penalty." He said, "If you put this case before a jury, Heather was going to be sentenced to death. She might not receive the death penalty, but she was going to receive a sentence of death. She'd faced more than 3 dozen charges in connection with the deaths, which happened between 2020 and her arrest in May of 2023, including 4 murder charges. Investigators have said they filed murder charges only in connection with the deaths for those which they could concretely prove a cause of death." Pressdee worked at 6 different nursing homes, facilities across the region in less than 3 years. And she was at her 7th last year when she was initially charged with 2 counts of murder in the deaths of 2 patients at Quality Life Services. 6 months later, after more families brought their suspicions to the Attorney General's office, investigators filed dozens more charges, including 2 more counts of murder. The 2 criminal complaints spanned more than 40 pages and detailed Pressdee's confessions to each insulin overdose. One woman looked at her like an animal would, she told investigators. One man, quote, "had no quality of life," she said, and she felt bad for another. One needed to die, quote. That was a frequent refrain at Sunnyview Nursing and Rehabilitation in Butler, co-workers told investigators. She's been linked to 6 patients' deaths during her time there. Pressdee, one fellow nurse told police, was always saying the residents, quote, "just needed to die." But why? That was the question for many of the family members who spoke Thursday. They said they knew what the affidavit said, but they asked if that was really the reason. So the defense attorney said his client wanted to fess up to what she had done. From the very beginning of the investigation, as to her motivations, he pointed to the fact she'd worked for years in a veterinary facility where her duties included euthanasia. She didn't want to see anyone suffer, he said. That's a hell of a defense. It's insane, of course. The facilities where the murders and attempted murders took place were Concordia at Rebecca Residences in West Deer, Bel Air Healthcare and Rehabilitation in Lower Barrel, Quality Life Services, Premier Armstrong Rehabilitation and Nursing Center, and Sunnyview Rehabilitation and Nursing Center in Butler. Lawsuits filed by multiple families allege a culture of cover-up. That's what we covered in our initial reporting. At the facilities, Pressdee bounced among, claiming the administrators went so far as to discipline nurses who discussed her behavior. Co-workers at Bel Air Health and Rehabilitation in Lower Barrel dubbed her the killer nurse. Her co-workers called her the killer nurse. Now, remember in our initial reporting, we were able to put together some ironic dynamics, such as, well, when people who worked with her say, hey, listen, there's something strange going on with this one because everybody keeps dying around her. But those nurses got disciplined. They got punished, almost as if the powers that be, that they were well aware that she was doing this to patients, doing this to those they were supposed to serve. It's very sad. Jackson, at least some level of justice, but the reality is a person doesn't get away with basically being a serial killer in this fashion without significant cover up and allowance and or protection happening at the facility. What say you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, negligence at best.
Yeah.
Of them just, not really caring that the numbers aren't really adding up. But I think that the prospect of never ever getting out of prison is a lot worse than the prospect of maybe, being euthanized yourself in 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
Knowing that there's nothing you can do to get out of a place like that is definitely punishment enough. I think this is one of the more egregious examples of psychopathy that you can come across when people do stuff like this. But prison is definitely made for people just like her. So that's where she's gonna spend the rest of her days.
Yeah, she's gonna die there. All right, Representative